If you've ever had to suffer through creating a user interface for a form that inputs a date or a time, then have I got an input type for you. Because HTML5 forms provides input types that indicate that the field is used for time or date-related entries. It makes the process of inputting dates and times much easier. Now there's 6 of these. There's input type equals time, there's type equals date, there's type equals date time, which gives you a date and a time. Then there's date time local, which is a date time in the local time zone where the machine that's viewing your web page is running. Then there's type equals week and type equals month. Now browsers have the choice here. They can display a custom date or time picker depending on the type of the field. Date and time fields can also be initialized with value strings, and they can use the min, max, and step attributes as well, just like number and range fields can. This table shows how you initialize the value of a given date and time control. So for input type equals time, you can set the value string to the following format. There's hours, minutes, there's optional seconds and fractional seconds, but hours and minutes you have to supply. For the min and max fields, you can supply a time string, which takes this format, and the default step value is 60 seconds should you decide to use a step attribute. For date, it's the same thing. You can enter years, months, and days. Min and max, you can use strings that take this format, and if you use step, the default step is 1 day. For date time, you use a string that's a combination of date and time, separated by the letter T right there in the middle of it. So you'd have the 4 year digits, 2 month, 2 day, the literal letter T, then hours and minutes, and optional seconds and fractions of seconds, followed by the literal letter Z. This is for world time. The min and max will take a string of this format, and the default step is 60 seconds. The date time local is pretty much the same as the date time string, only there's no Z on the end, but you do have to have that T in there. And again, just like the one before it, the min and max values will take a string of this format, and the step is 60 seconds. For the week and month, you supply a 4-digit year, and in the case of weeks, the literal character W, separated by a dash, and then a 2-digit week number. And for min and max, you can supply week strings, which are this format right here, and the default step is 1 week. And then for months, you simply supply the 4-digit year and the 2-digit month, and you can use a string of the same format for min and max, and the default step is 1 month. So let's take a look at how these work in the code. So here I am in the code, and I've got my date time section right here. Let's go ahead and open up, type date start file right there. We're going to scroll down, and we're going to go to the snippets and copy and paste all of these guys in. Right there. Copy, and we'll paste. So before we go out to the browser, let's just take a look. So in this case, I've got time, I've got a date, I've got a date time. This one's date time local, week and month, and I've got another one using month, but in this case, I'm showing an example of using min and max. So let's go ahead and see how these look in the browsers. Now, currently, as of the time of this recording, Opera is the only browser that supports the input type of date and time. So I'm only going to show it in that browser. So let's save. Let's go ahead and bring this up in Opera. And you can see that in Opera, I've initialized each one of these fields to an initial value. So in fact, let's just take a quick look at the code there. You can see that in each one of these cases, I've got a value that matches the required type string that goes with that field. So in the case of time, this is 1:30. In the case of date, I've got a valid date string. Here's the date time one, and there's the date separated by that T with the hours and minutes, and then the Z on the end. I didn't put any seconds in there. Same thing for local. This one has the week, right? So there's the year, and there's that W with the week number, and here's month, and so on. Okay, so let's go back to the browser. So you can see that Opera has provided some nice UI controls for selecting information. So for example, I can put the cursor here in the hour section, and when I'm doing my step, you can see it's stepping up by an hour each time. Now, the default is 60 seconds, but you can see that in my code, I've set the step to 3600 because 60 seconds times 60 in a minute is going to give me the number of seconds in an hour, which is 3600. So that's stepping up by an hour each time. Let's go back to Opera. So you can see it's stepping up and down by an hour. This is the date field. And you can see that Opera provides a nice date picker for me to choose information from. This is the date time field. Again, it's a combination of the date field and time, so I get both. And you can see in this case, I'm just stepping up and down by each one of the fields. And because this is the global version, there's a little UTC label next to it. That's the Universal Time Convention. For the local date field, however, you can see that that's not there. So I can, again, select the dates. This is the week. So you can see that when I'm selecting a week, the entire week selects at a time. And there's also a little week counter over here on the left-hand side. So I can use these arrows to go up and down through the months and choose the week that I'm interested in. For the month field, you can see that the entire month is selected when I mouse over it. So I can choose that month right there. And then for min and max, in this case, I'm selecting a month, but in the code, I've changed it so that the minimum value is January of 2011 and the maximum is December of 2011. So let's go back to the browser. And you can see that when I try to go back earlier, when I get to January, that little arrow gets disabled. I can't go further any back. And when I get all the way down to December, you can see I can't go any further, so I can choose that month there. So right now, Opera has the most comprehensive support for this. The other browsers don't even support these input types yet, but that will improve as time goes forward. And again, just like in most other cases, jQuery and jQuery UI provide some nice little plugins that you can use that substitute for some of these form fields. In fact, later on in the course, when we go through the exercise of converting an ordinary real-life form, we'll see an example of how to do that. In the meantime, however, you can go ahead and use these input types because they will fall back to regular input types. You'll just have to do the validation logic yourself until your browser catches up and supports them, or you can choose to use the jQuery plugins as well.